Yeah, I'd rather face you because I'll be talking to you. You have any questions? Yeah, it's all right. Right. The wall's not voting on this. All the other people on this side. Hello, could I have everybody's attention, please? Excuse me, could everybody please be seated? Yes. At this time, I'd like to open up the Financial Summit meeting that is being presented by Mayor Dan Rizzo for the purpose of the new number of bond issues that are before the City Council, and also to update the City Council on financial status. Today we have in the audience, we have from Powers and Sullivan, who is our outside auditing firm. There's Jim Powers and Todd Jerzik. From Bond Counsel, from Edwards and Willman, we have Richard Manley. The financial advisor from First Southwest was not able to make it. She actually had to call and cancel, and her name is Cindy McNanny. However, I have her information included in the documents I will be handing out to you today. We have from Collaborative Partners, Dave Billings, Romney Rosen, Scott Wooden, and we have other members from both of those companies, but I believe those will be the principals that we're giving the presentation. In order for this to move smoothly, I have an agenda for everybody. What I'll do is I'll hand out the agenda to the clerk and the City Council. And in fact, I was going to wait until we gave the bottom. At the bottom, I was going to distribute the financial information that we have pertaining to the bond issues. But I think we can do it now because I also attached the agenda to it at this time, and then we can review it at the end if that's okay with the City Council. Okay. So there should be. Yes. At the same time, we could have Collaborative Partners do the handout for the school projects. And I'd like to also extend my appreciation to the City Council meeting on a Saturday. We appreciate your coming and participating in this event, and also the school committee members that are here. I'd like to thank them for coming, and we have, as I said, we already have Superintendent Paul Dakin. We have School Committee Woman Carol Ty, School Committeeman Fred Sinella. We have School Committee Woman Stacy Rizzo. Is there anybody I'm missing, or? Is that it? Okay. So at this time, I'd like to ask the mayor to come up and give his opening remarks to the summit. Thank you.
Yeah. George, thank you very much. I'm going to just speak for a couple of minutes more from a philosophical standpoint of what we're looking to do here. I'm lucky to have these financial experts here with me today and behind me that will be able to give you a lot of information that I know you've asked for through council motions and otherwise. I also want to thank you, the city councilors that took time to be here today to participate in this financial summit. I know that just by what I've read and again through council motions that have come across my desk, that council are concerned that there's an awful lot of money being requested here, and I can appreciate that. I've had to vote on many of these issues like you in the past myself, so I understand your concern, for the votes that you're about to make. I have to say at the outset, and I know a couple of you I've spoken to personally about it, this has not been a situation where the city, myself obviously, has not been trying to withhold information. Back last January 9th of 2012, I came up here, and I think one of the first things that I said to all of you at that time was, this is the council chambers, and I respect that, and I am not going to be at every single meeting. I'll be here when I absolutely have to be here, speaking as a proponent of maybe some initiative that I might have that requires a city council vote, or if the city council asks me to be here. But I've always been of the belief that on Monday nights, city council conducts its business, and I'm generally speaking downstairs anyway if somebody were to ever need me. But, you know, I've always, you know, but, so that being said, if the feeling out there amongst some councilors that I haven't been forthcoming with information, I want to assure you it's nothing more than miscommunication, because that has never been the case, and it's never been something that, that I would have ever wanted to do. There's been talk about an overall bonding of $55 million, and I think probably all of you, I would hope all of you understand that it's truly, I mean, while we'll be bonding $55 million, the actual cost to the taxpayers is going to be a little over $21 million, just about what we paid to build the new police station, public safety facility. But in exchange for that, what you'll be getting is really an awful lot. You'll be getting a brand new school that's going to accommodate 690 students. You're going to be getting 3 new ball fields, a brand new softball field, 2 brand new Little League fields. And by the way, those Little League fields will no longer be in jeopardy of being sold off by the Archdiocese. They will remain in the care, custody, and control of the city of Revere, and therefore preserve the 1,000+ children, boys and girls, that play every year in the St. Mary's League. You know, each and every year, I know a lot of your kids have come up through the St. Mary's Little League, and you know, every year it gets a little more scary for parents with young kids that want to use those fields, not knowing the future of the Archdiocese. I mean, that happens to be my parish. I've got a lot of dear friends that attend and support that parish, and God willing, it'll go on forever. But with the closings of churches, there's always that fear amongst people that that day may come without any advance notice to us, that all of a sudden those fields go up for sale to a developer. And one thing that I really don't feel is this city can afford to lose any more fields. If anything, I'd like to see us gain fields. And that brings us to the next project that we're looking to undertake, and that's the refurbishing renovation of Harry Del Russo Stadium. I don't think there's a councilor here that probably hasn't stepped onto that field and thought to themselves, why can't we get a new field? And there's been many, many people in the past that have tried privately to raise funds through spaghetti dinners and pancake breakfasts to raise the millions of dollars necessary to renovate that field. And it's been very, very noble efforts put forth by many people over the years, but unfortunately, you know, you just can't raise the necessary money in those ways. So we were very fortunate to get close to $3 million through a grant. And so, you know, it makes sense to me, while we may have to spend $1 million or $2 million to, you know, renovate that field in its entirety, to turn away $3 million, you know, to send it back to the Gateway Parks program is something that I certainly don't want to do. And so again, one of these loan orders in there is asking you to share that same vision that I have and to build this new stadium for, you know, which, by the way, is going to be a multi-use stadium. It's going to be football, soccer. We have a new lacrosse program at the high school, so it'll be, and it'll be a regulation track. I know there's some members of the council that ran track in high school that didn't have access to a regulation track. This will be a regulation, state-of-the-art track with state-of-the-art lighting, and it's really a quality of life issue for the residents that I think we're all going to be proud of to present out to the general public. Some other of these loan orders include, you know, some takings that are necessary. You know, the ball fields, some homes to make the traffic flow in and around the McKinley School at its optimum. This is after conversations with Police Chief Caffarelli, Fire Chief Gene Doherty. I know many of you, we give these out. I don't know, you know, you get them probably every single month. They're these packets that we give out with all the information, budget numbers, minutes of the meetings that we have to discuss the McKinley School project. I'm hopeful that, you know, I know, like, for example, I happened to reflect back to the October one, where it went over just about everything that I've put forward in these loan orders, you know, the costs and the takings and everything else that would go along with that. And so, you know, I think, you know, that, you know, just every now and then going back through that can be extremely helpful in trying to keep up to speed with what we're trying to do on a day-to-day basis. I know it is difficult for me, who's down there day to day, and the city council. You know, I know many of you stop in and out of my office, and we're able to have a brief conversation from time to time about things that are going on. But, you know, I understand that the information isn't flowing as readily and as rapidly as I might be getting it. So, but I'm always there. I want you to know this for the future. I'm always there to answer questions that you may have. I mean, I would much rather get the call, in all honesty, than Seth Daniels. You know, to me, I'm able to answer questions that you may have, probably better than he could, and maybe I could quell a little bit of the confusion that might be swirling around, because this, I truly, truly feel this way, and I hope you all believe me. I view this as a joint venture. This is not an administration versus a city council or a school committee versus a city council. This is a community venture that we're trying to take on here that I believe is going to improve the quality of life for many, many people. And so I'm hopeful at the end of the day, when you've had a chance to hear all the financial information that our experts are going to talk about here today, that you know, you'll have a better feel for how we're justifying our numbers. We're not asking for a debt exclusion. We're not asking for a property 2.5 override. Prop 2.5 override. It's all within the constraints of our budget, and you know, it's my hope that you know, when you ultimately do consider all the facts and consider the financials, that you want it together with all of us participating in these great things that I think we can put forward for our community, share this vision, and really, you know, take that leap of faith with us that's going to bring this city really well into the 21st century, where we're supposed to be with respect to schools and parks and the like. So I thank you, really, Mr. President, you and the city council members, for taking time out of your Saturday here to participate in this. I know that, you know, we're going to have other dialogue going on Monday night, which is the official public hearing. So my thought was to give you all the opportunity to hear the numbers first. So, because otherwise Monday night could turn into a real back and forth, who's for it, who's against it, I just want you to have the numbers. So this way here, at least from a numbers standpoint, you know what we're dealing with. And at that point in time, then we can have a conversation on whether or not you think it's the right thing or not. So again, I want to thank you all for being here. And I'm certainly here to answer any questions myself personally, but there will be some other speakers, as you'll see on your agenda, who want to talk about what we're looking to do, and then we'll go through a presentation through collaborative partners and DRA, and then we'll, you know, obviously be happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do want, before George comes back on, I just want to do a couple administrative issues. It wasn't noted, but if you have cell phones, put them on vibrate, please. I know some of you have important calls to receive. At least put them on vibrate, because it does get disturbing when we hear the racetrack or a roll call or something going on someone's phone. So please do that. And I do want to note that most of the councilors are here today. Councilor Haas is away with his family. He had already pre-committed plans. And Council Vice President Jessica Giannino had to work, so she couldn't not attend today. So just want everybody to know why we do not have a full complement today. Okay. Okay. Mr. Treasurer.
Okay, at this time, though, I do want to hand out another item. It's the capital improvement plan that was submitted to the City Council on April 20th, 2012. The newer version of this will be updated in May of June of 2013, but I do want you to have this in front of you. Madam Clerk? Not Madam Clerk. Mrs. Clerk. Ms. Clerk. Okay, at this time, what I'd like to do is have Superintendent Paul Dakin come up for his remarks. Superintendent Dakin.
Thank you, George, and thank you, Council, for giving time on a Saturday to hear out this vision that the mayor has. All too often, I get the feeling at times that there is a school department and a city side, and that's somewhat disturbing in the sense that we are all leaders in the community, and schools are an integral part of that community. And I would venture to say that the new school buildings that are owned by the city have, over the last 7 or 8 years since they came out of the ground, addressed issues of our image as a community. And as the schools go, and you can see this in any real estate venue or any business venue, as the schools go in a community, so does a community. So I think it would certainly be more conducive to a community looking out for itself by understanding work in schools, work for schools, and the schools themselves are an integral part of this community. We're serving 6,800 kids, about almost 6,000 families and extended families, and it would be more comforting to go through these stages of development when we talk about these issues, realizing that these are city projects, not just school projects. That being said, I want to separate the bonding into the 5 categories, and I think the mayor did a wise job in presenting the bonding like this, because it hasn't been presented like this in the past. He's broken out the bonding to the issues that are directly related to the schools, and then a couple of other peripheral issues. In the past, each one of our other projects has had extended costs to that project. When we did the Wayland School, the first one, we did a lot of mitigation in that area with flood control and drainage relief. We dug up adjacent streets, put in better trunk lines for rainwater. We buried under the parking lot area hundreds of thousands of gallons of water storage so that it would relieve flooding in the area. We replaced major water mains that were coming down the streets. So there was always the vision whenever a school got built in the past, as it is in the present, to enhance some of the infrastructure of the city, because the school building is the city building. And if we can spread a radius where we can do good work, then we do that. At Wayland, we also put up, in the form of mitigation, a huge fence around the school that some would argue wasn't necessary. Yet it's something that helped the community up there to adjust. So there was millions of dollars virtually spent outside of, quote, the school building. Similarly, when we went down to Rumney Marsh, if we just looked at the project as being the school building only, that would be short-sighted because it wasn't what happened. We, again, did major work replacing an aqueduct, about 6 foot by 6 foot, under the ground water that moves water from the west part of the city over to the east part of the city under the highway. There was a lot of work done like that. There was a pumping station put in to relieve the flooding in the local neighborhood behind the Rumney Marsh Academy. And again, widening the radius. We ended up doing an all-turf field that is used by the Parks and Rec Department, by the high school, by kids in phys ed from the high school and Rumney Marsh. So again, the net was cast wider than just a school building to help a wider radius and do some impact work around the area. And then we went down to Paul Revere. And similarly, we couldn't push or build the building on the lot that was there. So some major decision went into play, how to make that neighborhood and school work better as a whole. And it was to take some properties in the area, widen the radius of it again, do some infrastructure changes and the like. So my point in saying this, that The only difference in those projects and the way the recent one has been presented is the separate entities of work, the widening of the radius, was virtually in the project and not seen as an additional expense the way the mayor has chose to target out and separate the issues in this. So let's roll to the new school. The new school at the McKinley. Sad, I think from all presentation, and I think you'll see it today, unlike when we were working on the Paul Revere School, which had to be sized down because there just wasn't enough capacity to keep it at the size that it was. I was here arguing about downsizing it at the time with the previous mayor. We needed those seats then. We couldn't do it because there was not capacity there. No money, can't do it, we adjust. But at least the infrastructure, the building itself, with its wider radius, was built, maybe not with enough seats that we needed at the time, but we got it done. So we fast forward to McKinley School. We're in a more difficult position with enrollment. We needed more seats when we built the Paul Revere. We need more seats now. We will need more seats next year. I'll say it again to put it on record. The day we open up the McKinley School, it will be over capacity. I'll tell you that now. Despite that, we must move on. So we look at the McKinley School. It's the biggest the state would build for us for that location. And from my understanding, now, unlike when we went at the Paul Revere, there's capacity for us to do this building. If the capacity was there when we did Paul Revere, it would have been a bigger building. But now we have capacity. So we look at the project, and the project itself with its 5 bonds can be separated. 3 of them are directly related to the school. Like the other buildings, it's increasing the radius of influence on how to get it done and get it done right. One of them is the building itself. That's one of the bonds. But like we did at Wayland, like we did at Rumney, like we did at Paul Revere, there's other, quote, stuff that has to get done. Part of that stuff is let's make the traffic patterns and the parking such that we won't have to have 50 cars or so parking in the neighborhoods and on Broadway, because a building that large just needs parking for the employees itself. So that necessitates the work on Fernwood Place and the taking of properties. That's nothing new, taking properties. We had to do that down at Paul Revere. Similarly, we have a land swap that's needed. A land swap's not new either. We had to do that at Rumney. Rumney needed a land swap to get the project completed there. So a land swap to replace the park out at St. Mary's is also part of and similar to and analogous to the other school projects we did, widening the radius. There's an extra star on the park piece in that out in West Revere. It solves what could be a future problem if people with that land did something different with it. By designating it parkland, we anchor that neighborhood with good park and parks that would be there forever. So we even get a double dip on that, as we got a double dip when we put in the turf field down at Rumney Marsh. So those 3 things are interconnected. If you go back and back and back to the beginning stages when presentations were made, that option, those 3 things, are the cheapest option rather than building on the stadium site and rather than building on the existing McKinley site. Those 3 packaged are cheaper with actual figures than what would have been done either on the stadium or on the old McKinley site. So it's the cheapest option. It's a necessary option with its widening of the radius to get it done, unlike anything before. Where this whole package differs is with some vision. And frankly, as somebody that's lived in the city for 61 years, I'm welcoming the vision that the mayor has to now say, all right, we as leaders in the community have a chance. We have capitalized when people drive down American Legion Highway and take a look at the Rumney Marsh Academy. I know I've received calls about what's that building, and I know over the years calls have come into the mayor's office, and the community can feel the pride of what a building like that does. People say, whoa, what's this place doing here in Revere? What is this? Similarly, as we go about building a new school at the McKinley site and enhancing those areas, we will get the same kind of factor. But deeper than that is the other two pieces of bond. We have a $2.7 million stadium bond. We could put 2.7 in the stadium, and I'd say it'd look okay. We'd get something for that money, of course. You want to do it right? I buy into the mayor's vision. You want to do it right? Push a little more money into it, make it a state-of-the-art facility next to a school, and now it can serve the community, a wider segment of the population in the community, with people in there walking in the morning and using the facility. All turf field can be used all year. It could be used for other events that we can't bring families in there for now, because most of the time the stadium turf right now is just a mud puddle and you can't do much there. So the tandemness of the advantage of having a school and a stadium put together at the same time, you can make one play to the favor of the other and enhance that site more, so it would become a vibrant community that's used much more than just for Pop Warner practice, or much more than 7 or 8 football games for the high school and Pop Warner games on Sunday. It would be a vibrant recreational facility, something that you folks have been calling for all along. Anchor that. I say that as a citizen, not the superintendent. We've got a chance to do something right. Anchor that facility, so playing with the school, we get the same kind of wow factor that people get when they drive by any one of our new buildings. As they drive down Revere Street, people look at that Paul Revere, and there's a wow factor to it, and all of you have even recognized that. We've got a chance here as leaders of the community. I'm speaking as a citizen. The few dollars it will cost in the tax rolls, I think as leaders in the community, if it's within the bonding capacity, you as leaders, I think, should anchor that project with the additional funding that the mayor is asking for. That has nothing to do with the school project. So it's Dakin, the citizen, Dakin, the 61-year resident of the community saying, heck, I would really like to do something right, instead of something that was only half done. And then take a look at the last piece. We've got the old McKinley School. The old McKinley School, what are we going to do? Board it up? What are we going to do with it? Turn it over to become another 250 Broadway? Or is there vision there? And this is what I give the mayor credit for. All right, spill a little money in it so that we can make it handicap accessible. It can become a public use facility. City Hall needs space. You've walked around this building. The school department, I have teachers in the high school that are teaching out of carts. They're teaching in corridors. You can come and see that if you need to, because we don't have enough space. The superintendent office has to move out of there. So in the visionary thinking, instead of taking an old McKinley School and let it exist with boards on it, or eventually be turned over to be another multi-unit building that someone will come in and make apartments in and further erode the characteristics of the schools by giving more and more students that we don't have enough schools for, but rather invest in the future by anchoring that facility with a little bit of forward thinking and saying, all right, let's get it handicapped accessible, let's get let's anchor the school department in there, because then the high school will last that much longer, and at the same time put offices for the city and the constituents of the city into that building. So now it makes in this area a whole government, quote, center approach with the 2 buildings and the post office, something that's done right. In addition to that is the forward thinking by the mayor that the school department has to get out of the high school. We have to go somewhere. There is nowhere to go. We would end up renting 10,000 square feet of space somewhere. So some office building in the city, we're going to have to rent that. We have the understanding that if the school department has to go down and rent space in one of the floors in one of the banks on Broadway, that's money that disappears. Smarter idea. School department push the kind of money it would rent space for into the bond for the old McKinley School. So instead of renting somewhere and pushing the change into some landlord's pocket, we push it back into the citizen's pocket by in using the funds and and upgrading that facility. So the 2.5 million or so for that bond to take a look at the old McKinley anchors that building, preserves it from that site from expansion to more apartments that do us no good, and anchors it as part of a government zone in this end of the city. In addition, it double dips with forward thinking, money that the school department would have to be spending, pushing it into a bond to help the bonding of that facility. To me, as a citizen, the second one, that McKinley piece, is also a forward-thinking idea. Rather than have another 250 Broadway at 190 Yeaman Street, we end up with another government facility that's actually supported somewhat by school department monies that would have to be renting elsewhere. That's a good idea. The stadium, doing it right, that's a good idea. The other three pieces, we need to build a school. That was part of a Vision 12 years ago that was presented to previous councils. Some of you might have been here, some not. It was a vision to the McKinley school community. It was a vision to the school department. We can't have that. We need a new school. It's the cheapest option with those three pieces. I ask you to really consider those three things have to go together. And I would say the mayor's vision and foresight into anchoring a stadium and anchoring another city-owned facility with indirectly city money, school money supporting it is wise and forward-thinking. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Superintendent Dakin. At this time, I'd like to ask James Powers and Todd Jersky to come up and present the fiscal year 2012 audited statements. The statements themselves are audited. However, they weren't able to give us finalize them because the city has not completed what they call the OPB actuarial study for June of 2012, other post-employment benefits. So the actuarial is having a little trouble getting some information from the state, and once that's done, these statements themselves now are not going to change. But the addition of a OPEB line item will be included. So I just wanted to note that before Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Jersky made their presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Powers from Powers & Sullivan. Todd is passing out the draft financial statements for fiscal year 2012 and a little handout that we've put along with that to kind of guide us along and hit you with some financial highlights. Obviously, like George said, the financial statements are not completed, but only for one item, but all the budgetary work has been done, and so the items that are important will be properly reflected in these financial statements, and once we get that last piece, we'll be able to conclude the fiscal 2012 audit. My objective today, and Todd's objective today, is to just give you an overview of the 2012 audit and give you an overview of the audit process and give you a sense of some new accounting standards that are coming through. What we do, and again, without following along, and obviously you just got a copy of the financial statements, and if you had any further questions through George, I'd be happy to come back after you got a chance to review that once the final reports are completed and give you a final presentation. But at this point in time, our objective is to issue an audit opinion as to whether or not we agree that the city's financial statements as they present are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And they're also in compliance with federal, state laws and reporting requirements to the state. We perform our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and issue a various number of reports as part of that. One of the things you need to know, and a lot of times it's a misconception, these are not our financial statements. These are your financial statements. We only own the audit opinion. Everything else is presented and done by management. We assist in assisting them in producing the actual financial statements, but these are coming from the city's books and records, not ours, and everything that's in there is theirs. One of the good things, and it's not part of a real presentation on just kind of the financial overview today, is that overall we believe the city has sound financial policies, procedures in place. They do an excellent job of controlling cash and reconciling. And so the books and records as you see them for the general fund, the special revenue funds, the enterprise funds, you can rely on those, at least from the reports coming out of Laurie's and George's office throughout the year, as being accurate. Because we test not only at year end, but we test for the entire year, and when we do the audit piece. And so I think as you need to make decisions as the year unfolds, we believe you could rely on the information coming out of the financial offices to give you a true representation of the financial position at any time during a particular year. What we expect to issue when we do our opinion is an unqualified audit opinion. Except for that one piece for the OPEB, other post-employment benefits, we would be issuing an unqualified audit opinion, which is the best opinion that you can get. And basically, we agree that the city's financial statements are true and accurate and present a true representation of its financial condition and results of operations for fiscal year 2012. We also did not find any significant violations with compliance with laws, regulations, et cetera, as part of our testing. That doesn't mean we tested everything and things couldn't have slipped through the cracks, but overall, I think the city does an excellent job in most of its financial operations. Inside the financial statements themselves, there's a section called Management Discussion and Analysis. In that management discussion and analysis, it gives you an overview of the results of operation and management's take on why things improved or deteriorated. One of the problems we have right now in the management discussion and analysis is it's still draft and there's still numbers to be included in there. So substantially, it's somewhat incomplete. So what I've decided to do, instead of going through the management discussion and analysis, is provide some financial highlights that I think are important that you would glean off of that particular discussion when the final report is issued. And so I'm briefly going to go over these particular financial highlights, but I believe from an overall standpoint, now we're the auditors, we're not the financial advisors, and et cetera, but we still do a lot of these particular audits and understand governmental financial statements and whether or not we would consider them. We can't make management decisions, but we can kind of give you that I believe that there's sound financial footing at the city at the end of fiscal year 2012. That there's sufficient fund balances and reserves set aside, that the city has financial flexibility in case of, obviously, things like the storm we had the other day that can cause financial problems as it goes through. I expect the snow and ice budget this year is somewhat worse than it was last year because of the type of winters we've had. So obviously, having some financial flexibility and having reserves in place, both in the general fund, stabilization funds, and your water and sewer enterprise funds, is a positive. It's also a positive when rating agencies take a look at you to see that you've maintained that solid financial footing, so you get the best available rate for the city based on that information and other demographics. So at the end of fiscal year 2012, for fiscal 2012, you had about a $144 million budget. And what you'll find is that over half of your revenues generated from taxes, real estate, personal property taxes. You'll find that state aid, over $50 million, and about another $8 million made up of things like investment income, motor vehicle taxes, excise taxes, things like that. So substantially, all of your revenue and your footing on a go-forward basis is really dependent on two things in the general fund. Well, obviously, your real estate taxes and the level of state aid. And so those type of things will help, even though we don't do projections, will obviously be something that you need to, as you look forward and do your capital and operating plans over the next several years, be focused on those particular revenue sources as being, hopefully being stable. And then obviously you've got 2.5% increases to your real estate and new growth that obviously adds to additional expenses that come down the road. What you'll find is that you transferred $1.4 million of free cash in fiscal year 2012 from the general fund over to the stabilization fund. What you find is the stabilization fund is up to $2.6 million. Your revenues exceeded the budget, which is positive. One of the things that, and the biggest portion of that is tax liens, people that haven't paid their tax on time, shift from real estate, personal property tax over to a tax lien, same thing for water and sewer. But you find that you have a healthy collection of tax liens. One of the things the city does, probably from a management standpoint, better than most other communities that I see, is that unpaid taxes are pretty much immediately liened. Some places wait a long time. And one of the easiest ways to take a look at tax liens, receivables, et cetera, is every dollar that you have out in a receivable that isn't paid is $1 of free cash you don't have. Okay? And the city, I think George does a great job of aggressively pursuing those particular taxes and protecting the city's interest by liening them on an extremely timely basis. Other things that were positive in fiscal year 2012 is that expenditures were under budget by $1.7 million, combination of several departments, but pretty much there was no over expenditures in that particular year, which is again a positive result from the standpoint of just financials. And you had a net budgetary increase of $4 million between fiscal year 2011 and 12. Again, budgeting conservatively on your revenues, staying on top of those appropriations to make sure that departments, if there's a possibility to exceed their appropriations, measures are taken to check that, get that in balance before the end of the year, and at least that's what I'm finding. It's the first year that we've done the audit, and that's kind of what we saw in this particular year. You have a total general fund balance of $21.4 million. There's a lot of reserves that you have in place, especially for the schools, that has been commonplace for years and years, and that gives you a lot of flexibility with a fund balance that high, but a lot of that money's already been earmarked and spent. It can change a little bit as you go forward, but obviously, say the school department has $11–12 million of that reserve for their, and it has been that for several years. So you're staying consistent in the application of your accounting practices within the city and keeping sufficient reserves. So in case of something happens at the school, they have some flexibility again to deal with any increases in unexpected expenditures. And obviously, if you talk to the superintendent, they're probably the most volatile department from an expenditure standpoint, besides things like health insurance, that things can happen that were unexpected, especially with special education expenses that go through. So having that particular reserve is again, something that's healthy and well managed. What you do have is unreserved fund balance of about $6.8 million. That unreserved fund balance is not free cash. There are things the state, as they go through their process to determine free cash, have to deduct from that 6.8. But from the financial community, that's one of the measurement sticks that they use to take a look whether or not the city is in a healthy position. Other things they'll take a look at is stabilization funds. I said that earlier, that you have about $2.67 million in stabilization funds. Gives you financial flexibility, and as a percentage of expenditures, which is another measurement that the finance community, especially if you're talking about bonds, et cetera, and obviously if Cinda could have made it today, she would have, I think, said that you know, you want to have at least 5% in unreserved fund balance compared to your annual expenditures. Along with that and your stabilization fund, you're a little over, you know, about 7.3%, and your total fund balance gets you into a very positive place that I think the rating agencies would look favorably upon you. Obviously, they make their own decisions, but from my comparison to the city too, and how well is it managed compared to other communities of similar size and demographics, it's a solid fund balance, not extreme, but gives you enough flexibility to deal with things that are unexpected. I'll briefly go over things like the water and sewer operations. Again, water and sewer operations and your other funds too, your capital project funds and your special revenue funds, those are self-supporting. The water and sewer operations, they are self-supporting. They don't rely on a general fund subsidy in order to stay afloat. And what you'll find in fiscal year 2012, substantially the water and sewer activities broke even, and still had $1.5 million worth of fund balance at the end. Again, they'll get their free cash certification. In addition to that, they had another $1 million worth of reserves made up of stabilizations and a couple other computer and reserves. So again, for that $20 million operation, it's in decent shape relative to that, obviously, as the revenues go forward and the projections of revenues. And usually when you have fund balances like that, your rates are obviously a little bit, water and sewer is a harder thing to measure because you can project how much usage you're going to have. But if there's a drought, water bans, all kinds of other things, people are becoming more efficient and with what they buy, and they may not be using as much water, and that could have a different change in what you actually received. Real estate taxes are pretty easy. You know what it is, here it is. There isn't any volatility in that particular revenue stream. But that's something that I think it looks like it's been well managed. Most of the expenses that come through that relate to the actual MWRA payments, and a smaller portion of the expenditures for those particular operations come from payroll operations and expenses that are needed for operations of that size. Another fund that you have that obviously adds a positive to the financial health of the city is the internal service funds for health insurance. You have about $20 million worth of activity. You have about $6.5 million at the end of fiscal year 2012 as fund balance. Not all of that is the city's money. There's an employer share in order to balance the rates and the activity. This is not too much of a fund balance to maintain, to have that, because obviously I know the city's experienced a significant drop in the health insurance expenses because of plan changes. I believe we went around the previous year. I think it was over $1 million that you saved. Over $1 million was saved in fiscal year 2012. And so having that surplus, again, gives you financial flexibility, and it also sits back when a rating agency takes a look at you, especially for borrowing rates. They know that if you have a bad year being self-insured for some of your insurance plans, that you're not going to have to immediately draw upon the general fund to make up for any losses. And so they'll be able to absorb any of that fluctuations. And like I think I said earlier, that's one of the most more difficult things to maintain costs. And so having that particular fund balance set aside is, again, another positive viewpoint on the town's financials. Two things that are negative. This is not all positive. One is a couple of long-term liabilities that everybody has out there, every city and town throughout the Commonwealth. George had mentioned it earlier, the other post-employment benefit liability. Basically, if you work for the city, town, state, anybody, most of the places the law requires that you provide health insurance to them as they retire. Well, that liability is accumulated during the length of service of that particular employee, and when they retire, meeting all the new requirements, there's a liability that you accrue, in effect, over the life of that employee's service. That liability, similar to your pension liability, needs to be recorded on your financial statements. This is a financial statement reporting mechanism. You only have to fund, and you're doing that right now in a pay-as-you-go for these, which is in accordance with state law. So you're in compliance with all the laws, but what the outside investors want to take a look at is how much is that liability, and how do you measure that, and that's where you bring in the actuaries. Right now you have at the last valuation was on July 1st, 2010, and the accumulated unfunded liability was $289 million. Well, that's obviously a lot of money. There are things that the city's taken steps to that I expect in the next actuarial valuation as it's being done that will be positive for that number because of the plan changes that were taken into effect. Obviously, the level of contributions, the employer-employee share, all the other things that can happen and change every couple of years based on these valuations may change that liability from $289 million. It could go down, it could go up. but the upside of that has been minimized because of the actions the city has taken by doing you saved $1 million in fiscal year 2012 just by those plan changes, and this is extended out over a long-term period. And so we'd expect some changes, positive changes in that. However, once that's done, it's still going to be a big number, okay? There's no getting away from that. Most communities in Massachusetts are not funding this like you do with your pensions. And I think a lot of times what we're getting, a lot of questions is we're dealing with the rating agencies, and George will probably the same thing, is what are you doing to plan for maybe starting a funding schedule, or what's your long-term range of how to fund this particular liability like you're doing with the pensions. It's a struggle for most communities to determine the balancing act of how to do that, and everybody else is still in their infancy stages relative to addressing this particular long-term liability. So the city's not behind or ahead of the curve for the most part. It's just something that we need to bring up to you as part of that. Same thing with your pensions. The pension plan, you know, the Revere retirement system, obviously contributory retirement system, is about 58% funded as the, I think it was 1/1/2011, and your unfunded liability is $75.6 million. There's a plan in place. Legally, you're making your required contribution. It's funded on an actuarial basis, and so if you continue making those particular payments as the actuaries perform, you will fully fund that over the next 20 or so years and take care of that liability for the long term. But it's obviously a debt that needs to be paid. One of the benefits of having those funding assets in place is that the city's contribution is minimized by the expected investment earnings of what's set aside. And so that's why the OPEB liability is so high compared to the pension, is because for years you've been putting money aside for those particular, as well as the employees. And so we expect the state is going through and has some legislation on the Hill to make some changes to OPEB that I think will allow some additional plan changes and even minimize and maybe limit the number of people that can join, depending on years of service, what you've done, which again will have a positive effect. So not only city, but the state is taking a serious look at these particular liabilities. And under these particular things, next year and a couple of years after that, I'm not going to get into the detail, but from financial reporting, there's going to be some changes to the governmental accounting standards boards that will really bring these particular long-term liabilities to life, as opposed to just having them as disclosures in your financial statements. They're going to be right on top of what's called the statement of net position. So that's a brief summary of the audit, the results, the financial side of this. And obviously, if you had any questions on that, I'd be happy to address them at this point in time.
I believe what I'm going to do is I'm going to refer the Judge, hang on one second, Judge.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just doing what I usually do.
But what I'm going to be doing anyways is referring this to our Ways and Means Committee, so we may be asking you to come up again.
Okay, we'll be happy to. Sorry about that, Judge.
That's okay. Thank you.
Doing my normal stuff.
Okay. Thank you, Council President. At this time, I just want to introduce to you the bond counsel for the city. His name is Richard Manley, who is the, if you'd stand, please, Richard, and this is the bond counsel from former Palmer and Dodge, and now it's your firm's name. The new firm's name is, I had the card and I just put it in my folder, but I asked them for it, something Wildman. Edmunds Wildman, I'm sorry. Okay. So he'll be here for any questions at the end for the discussion. The financial advisor, as I said, Cinder McNanny from First Southwest, who helps us with our numerous issues, especially the city's bond rating. Was not able to make it today, but however, what she would have presented will be handled in, it somewhat has been distributed to you already, but it'll be handled under my distribution and explanation of the financials. Under the next part of the program, we have the presentation by collaborative partners in Drumney, Rosen, Anderson. So David Billings and Scott Wooden, and the rest of your group, if you'd come up and begin. Thank you.
I would just like to preface this, that I know we have a public hearing coming up Monday night, that if you're making this presentation to the council tonight, there won't be any need for them to do this again, because we've heard our piece already, so just, because you're repeating everything again, and we've heard it, so, and we're going to have a long meeting Monday night, so I just, it's on TV right now. They'll be hearing it. All they have to do is watch Revere TV. So, you may proceed, Dave.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Councilman. Let me just sort of very quickly bring you through the history. About almost a year ago now, the city retained collaborative partners in DRA to start the feasibility study on a new school or renovated school for what the MSBA has agreed to, a population of 690. We went through and looked at over 12 sites. We looked through all the different options available to the city, and we presented those to the Revere Building Committee and to the Massachusetts School Building Authority. In October, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, the MSBA, gave an approval for us to develop one design, which is the putting a new school building on Hill Park. We developed that design. We looked at the estimates. We looked at the at all the different issues, and then presented a full budget and full design to City of Revere's Building Committee and then to the MSBA. On January 30th, the state approved this program, and they approved a funding for this program. The funding is in total for $44,382,369. It's broken down in many aspects. In your bonding, it's broken into two pieces. One is for the school costs, which include design costs, construction, furniture, technology, contingency. That is for $42,402,369. Because land acquisition, which is required for this project, needs to be under a separate authorization, the costs of those have been broken out into a separate bond authorization of $3 million. Those include the land required to build the school and the take properties on Ferdinand Place and Fernwood Ave in order to facilitate parking and movement through the site. It also is to acquire some land that's behind St. Mary's, which the city is proposing to turn into a park that will replace the park that's replace Hill Park. This is a requirement of the National Park Service. We need to get their permission. We need to get a legislative permission to do this. We are in the process of doing that. We have submitted all the required documentations to the National Park Service and to the state. That is in process. What we need now is the final authorization from the city. If you'll look in your packet, there is a schedule. It's kind of what we call a timeline. It's starting out in the January approval of the MSBA, really giving us authorization for the project and working on exactly what the grant agreement the MSBA is going to give us. We've started immediately on the acquisition process with the National Park Service and legislative approvals. We were hoping for funding authority in February. We're now into March. It is critical, and one of the critical timelines that we have is that we need to get this building under construction by early 2014. We really want to go out to bid in December. And we need, right now we're looking at an 8 and 9 month design, which time frame, which is very quick. So in order for us to get this building open in fall of 2015, which is really one of the requirements the school department has in order to help relieve the severe overcrowding that currently is in the schools, we need to really get out to bid this winter, which means we need to get DRA going on finalizing the design. Also in this timeline, we've got the Dela Russo Stadium, as you can see on the plans. These two projects are cheek and jowl with each other. We're going to be working with Frank Stringent, Community Development, make sure these projects are coordinated, and we feel that there's no problems that we can work with these timelines to get both these projects done on the timeline required. For Dela Russo Stadium, that's going to be spring 15. For the school, it's going to be fall of 15. And we feel that there won't be any issues putting that timeline together. On the renovation of St. Mary's Fields, that actually can be pushed out to late 2015, 2016. In order to turn them into a park, we really don't have that much construction that needs to be done now. There are 2 ball fields that exist. Which is more than enough to satisfy the National Park Service, because we're only displacing one field. So immediately the city will see an increase of 1 ball field in their recreational resources. Our plan is to add a 3rd, renovating the entire field and adding a 3rd field to make this really a state-of-the-art athletic facility for that part of Revere. Also, any renovation to the McKinley building itself can't happen until the New Hill School is completed. So it won't even start, and any funding wouldn't happen until late 2015. So that's the basic timeline of the various projects. There's, actually, Scott, why don't you sort of give a quick run through of the design itself.
Thanks, Dave. Good afternoon. Scott Wooden from DRA Architects. I know that most of you have probably seen these plans and are well familiar with the development and how we got to this point. We started looking at 12 different sites originally throughout the city, some of which were potential sites for the building construction, some of which were potential sites for fields displacement regarding either building on Dela Russo Stadium or potentially on the Hill Park site. After our original estimation of all of the sites that were available, we established that there were 3 sites that were viable for the building construction, one of which was the existing McKinley site, one of which was Dela Russo Stadium, and one of which was the Hill Park site. After doing an evaluation of those 5 options for a number of different reasons that were evaluated, primarily the cost and the ancillary costs associated with each of the schemes, the Hill Park site emerged as the preferential scheme. The plan that we have here, councilors, can you see okay from on the screen back there? Okay, thanks. The plan that was developed, and it went through a number of different iterations that looked closely at the existing recreational resources on site and how those were going to be replicated or replaced elsewhere. Also, traffic considerations both on the site and off the site were heavily regarded in developing this plan as it's being presented this afternoon. The school, as was pointed out by Dr. Dakin and Mr. Billings, has 690 students. It's approximately 123,000 square feet. The site organization, originally we were looking at primary access from Park Avenue. And originally we have in this area right here, the primary parking on the north side of the building, we have 86 parking spaces. There were significant concerns about the density of the traffic on the site and its impact on Park Avenue and queuing onto Broadway. Looking at it and in discussions with our traffic consultants, as well as a requirement for some additional parking to both support the school and support the Dela Russo Stadium, this additional land along Fernwood Place was also identified as being critical to the success of the plan. This brings our total parking up to a little bit over 100 parking spaces, which will accommodate all of the parking for the facility, as well as additional parking for visitors, specials, special instructors, as well as some parking for the stadium. The access and the vehicular access on the site is considered to be primarily from Fernwood, and to come in to there's two driveways here. One is the existing Fernwood place, which will still remain in operation, and you can gain access right through that aperture right there into our parking area proper, but it will also maintain access to the back of Walgreens, both for deliveries and people coming to go through the drive-through window. But our primary access to the site will be through the western entrance here, so that people can come along, and there's a drop-off edge here for the older children, where parents can drop off along this sidewalk and then turn around right here and exit back out through the site, never having to engage the traffic within this area and not having to discharge out of the site onto Park Avenue. That'll alleviate a lot of the traffic within this circle, as well as alleviate a lot of the traffic that has to come back here onto Park and subsequently possibly to Broadway. Much more efficient that way. Much safer as well. We'll have less traffic contending with the pedestrians. You know, this was a similar strategy that we employed, which made all of the difference at the Paul Revere School, where by acquiring those additional properties along Roosevelt, we were able to activate a much safer vehicular pedestrian traffic pattern on the site. So with the younger children, we'll still have the opportunity to come in with their parents driving them, come into the site, come into this area, and come along the drop-off loop that's right in front of the building. The principal and some administrators will be out there collecting the children and bringing them safely into the lobby of the building. Those folks can either circle around all the way around this loop and come back out to Fernwood, or they can circle around and come down here out to Park Ave. And at Park Ave, they can either travel east and come back, travel west and come back through this neighborhood, or travel east and come out onto, am I losing my laser here? Or travel east and come back out to Broadway. So this plan works well now. It's obviously going to add some density to the neighborhood in terms of parking, but it's a flexible plan. It gives a lot of options. It's, as our traffic consultant advises us, it's something that will continue to develop over the course of the design, and also as it's being implemented in reality, because you can't predetermine all of the tendencies of the traffic patterns. But like I said, it offers a lot of flexibility, it offers a lot of options, and the additional investment in those additional properties makes all the difference for opening up that access way to Fernwood and additional parking. In regards to the existing site and the replication of the recreational resources, we have on the current Hill Park, there's obviously a softball field, a playground, 2 tennis courts, and 2 basketball courts. This plan, as it's developed, will allow for the development of the 2 tennis courts and 2 basketball courts on the site, which will continue to serve as a community recreational resource, but could also be a hard surface play area for the school. There will be a pathway that comes around the northeast corner of the track here and accesses those play areas from the school, as well as an age-appropriate playground at the north side of the building, which is that terracotta kidney-shaped shape at the top of the building. So just a quick look at the other plans here. Jim, would you mind grabbing me the other laser pointer that's in the bag? The areas highlighted in yellow are the circulation areas. As you can see in this area here, there's a main lobby that's accessed both from the north side of the building as well as from the south side of the building. this is envisioned to be able to be two separate drop-off areas. So Park Avenue, there could be drop-off along Park Avenue, probably a little bit to the, thank you very much, probably a little bit to the, a little bit better, probably a little bit to the west of the building as people are coming down Foster Street. They can turn out onto Park and queue up along this sidewalk here, and children can be dropped off and brought into this entrance. That'll also allow for, you know, maybe 20 or 30% of the drop-off coming from Park Avenue rather than on-site to further mitigate the density on the site. The general organization of the floor plan is it's a 3-story structure. There's a classroom wing here to the east. There's the cafeteria, student dining area is here. The library and the gymnasium stack on the second floor. The gymnasium stacking over the cafeteria, over the student dining area. Similar strategy to what we did at West Revere School. It allows the building footprint to get a lot smaller, allowing for more space on the site that's for parking and recreation. Again, classrooms distributed across the eastern classroom wing, and classrooms on the 3rd floor. The elevations right now, we're looking at a combination of masonry and terracotta clay rain screen products. There's a lot of glass on the building that highlights certain areas like the lobby and the stair towers and access, bringing a lot of light into the corridors, bringing a lot of light into the lobby space. This is an elevation looking from the east end of the building into the courtyard. This is the drop-off area here for the students. The library element projects over that, creating a sort of canopy and protecting the entrance area. And this is a view down at the bottom from Della Russo Stadium, looking back toward the school. And this gymnasium here also has a lot of glass on it to really make that gymnasium a part of the stadium, as well as the stadium a part of the gymnasium, kind of a continuous space. This is a view looking up Park Avenue as you approach the building from Broadway. Again, a lot of masonry. The building is very proud to the street. We pull it fairly tight to Park Avenue so as to allow plenty of area in the rear of the building to accommodate those 4 lanes of parking and parking spaces and vehicular traffic. And this is the view looking back toward Broadway on Park. And that's that entrance from Park Avenue. So cars could queue up here along Park after pulling out of Foster, and the students could walk back along the sidewalk and into this entrance and engage with the other children entering from the entryway from the parent drop-off on site. Was that the last slide, Jim? It is, yeah. Okay. Any questions? Questions will be at the end. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Quickly just go through what we're calling the schematic design budget, which is actually the same as what the project funding agreement is with the MSBA. We've got the $700,000, which is what's already been authorized for the feasibility study. Then we go into the new building project costs, the administrative costs, legal fees, management fees. Then we have the architectural and engineering design. Then we have the site acquisition needed for the school, the land in Fernwood, and the properties behind St. Mary's. Then we have the construction cost, which is based on a number of estimates and is very much in line with what we're seeing in the marketplace. Some miscellaneous project costs, utility costs, moving costs. Then we've got the allowance for furniture and equipment and technology for the building. And then we have both construction and what we call owner's contingency or design contingency, which gives us the budget of $44,382,396. Now, the way the MSBA structures their grant agreements, and it is different from the previous grant agreements that cities had for the schools, is they put caps on site costs and on building costs throughout all their programs. They also, on contingency costs, will give you a range. That's why you see that there is a range to the grant agreement. If all of the contingency that's spent is what they deem to be eligible for reimbursement, then the total grant amount would go up to 29.5. If none of the contingency is eligible, and it's the MSBA that makes this determination, then the grant agreement would go down to 28.1. Differential being, of course, the city share. The higher the grant, the less city share, the lower the grant. At this point, until the project's done and the MSBA does their final audit, we can't tell you where that number's going to be. That is why the MSBA, in full disclosure, says this is how you're supposed to present the grant agreements. This budget is based on what the MSBA has agreed to. This is what their offer is, and this is what they're looking for the city to authorize. Any questions? George? Okay.
When you have a chance, David and Scott, if you'd also like to introduce the other people in your firms that you brought with you today, so if you just introduce some of the other members of the collaborative partners, and then Scott.
Oh, sure. We've got Joe Naughton, our COO, and Sue Bailey, who is the project manager on the firm.
And Carl Franceschi is with us today from DRA. He's a principal at DRA, and Jim Garino, one of the architects at DRA.
Thank you. I would also like to thank the department heads who were here today, who sat down, and we all sat down together to put these financial statements together that you were handed out today. I think they did a great job, and I appreciate their help very much. You have the gentlemen, I want to put ladies first here, the city auditor, Laurie Jadella. You have the assessors, Andy Iovan, Dana Brangiaforti, and John Ferengia, who's not here today. And we have Head of Community Development, Frank Stringy, and the Head of Economic Development, John Fester. I thank you for your help in devising and putting these financial statements together. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to go over the packet that I handed out to you. If we'd take off the agenda page and you'd be on the first page, it says bond authorizations. Okay. The bond authorizations, you see on the left-hand side, the 5 bond authorizations that have been requested. The first amount, the $42,402,396 for the New Hill School, is different than the what you'll see in the report from the what's in the grant agreement with MSBA. The only reason that is because the SBA grant is I'm going by the higher number and also the higher cost, approved cost, $16,283,348. Then if you look at the $1,908,000 that was reduced the amount of the $44,385,000 originally that was in the budget, because due to the authorizations, the building of the school and the purchase of the land are 2 different authorizations under the law. So then the bonding amounts for the school itself, it would be $14,303,348. The land purchase is $3 million, and that's the amount that will be bonded at the outside. The St. Mary's ball field is $2.1 million for improvements, and the McKinley renovations will be $2.5 million. However, zero of that amount will be bonded because the school department has agreed to pick up the renovations on a rental agreement, which they'll embed into their budget. And then Della Russo Stadium is $5.5 million, and the amount of a grant is, the amount of the grant is $2,720,000, and the total of the bond will be $2,780,000. The total amount of the bond issue at the high side will be $22,183,348. That's down from the total of authorizations of $55,502,396. And for the reasons being where the other sources of funding are coming from, and plus the MSBA reimbursements. But however, under the MSBA and the grant, the total amount of monies must be to be authorized. With that, going on to the next page, two things I do want to make note of here. I want to note that you'll see in that big sheet I gave you, the large sheet with all the city's debt on it, which I blow up because of the fact that if I put in the small writing that would be, the printer would be, none of us could read it, so I made it larger. I know it's awkward to handle, and I apologize for that, but I myself wouldn't be able to read it, so I figured some of the rest of you would not be able to read it. But I want to just tell this council this, that we have, as far as refinancing of our bonds, we have that on watch. When it becomes conducive to the city of Revere to refinance their bonds, First Southwest and myself discussed this numerous times during the year. Right now, and nothing in the past has ever been conducive for us to refinance the bonds. The other part of the that I do want to bring out is the fact that free cash this year has not been certified as yet because of the Bureau of Accounts, and what we're looking at now is a possible figure of $2.8 million for coming in this year. The as far as the bond authorizations, if you look at the bond authorizations, and I want to take this up a little further when I get into the bond authorizations, going through these bond authorizations, have been known for a number of years that there are some bond authorizations that we have out there that should be rescinded. And I'll be sitting down with myself, First Southwest, the counsel for the financial consultant for the city, and counsel for the city, and the bond counsel, and Jim Powers from Powers and Sullivan, to actually cut that down, because at one point the city authorized 3 new schools, and it was $45 million, and then there were so many restrictions on that that the city really couldn't go out and get a legal opinion on that. So what happened was another amount was bonded on top of that, and that $45 million was not rescinded, and then there are other issues in the when you come to the bond statement that need to be rescinded. So that would clear up. It's something we should do before the end of this year, and we'll be asking the city council. I'll have the bond council draw up the rescinding orders so that when it is passed, the rescinded orders are passed, it will actually lower the amount of authorization that we have out there. I am not in favor of, you also have the option at that time to bond it and bring it on to a like cause, but you still have to go to the same like purpose with the same number of years, but you still have to go through the same, if I'm not mistaken, Rich Manley, I will definitely correct me on this if I'm wrong, but to my understanding is that you have to go through the same procedure as you would if you had a new bond issue, so I would rather just clear it up, and then if you want any new bond issues, we'll just go through the same procedure as we would have anyway. So now if we go to page 2 of my handout, and you'll see this is, was devised, this model, well, this schedule was put together by myself and the Cindy McNanny from First Southwest, again, the financial advisor of the city. You will see in column A, you will see the existing debt for the tax levy supported debt for the city. And column B, you'll see some short-term interest notes. Now, also included in here are when we sell bonds, or when we go to sell these bonds, and when we enter into the markets, what will happen is that we don't sell them right away. We issue what they call bond anticipation notes, and we're able to issue bond anticipation notes for at least 2 years on the issue. Now, with that, we have taken into consideration on doing that to make the bond schedule that we'll have to fund this $22 million of new bonding to fit it on the schedule and make it most affordable to the city. We also included in there the estimated amount of bond interest that the city will have to pay. Then we're looking at the 1.5 million, 1,518,000 general obligation bonds. That will be July 15, 2013, excuse me, and that will be the schedule for that. Those bonds are the bonds that will be coming due for the $700,000 for the McKinley School and the police communications and police and fire communications and communication record management systems. Here we go with the general obligation bonds, which will be dated September 1st, 2015, which are further in the schedule. Then, if this is the cover page of the schedule, then we are going to sell the bonds. In there is the bonds for the new Hill School, about $7.1 million at that point. And then we feel that because of the way we can bond, because how the grant is going to be coming in from the MSBA, we'll then issue another $7,151,000 in order to complete our obligation on that new McKinley School. The McKinley School bonds will be dated on September 1st, 2017, and that's that schedule. And that's what you're looking at, and you see the dates on either side. You'll see the fiscal year in which the serialized debt will actually start, and the investment cost of those bonds will be hitting the budget. So that's what pretty much this is exactly what this schedule points out, so that we'll know when in our planning, in our capital planning, exactly what monies we will need for our capital funds we will need in order to pay our bonded indebtedness. Then if you go to G, you'll see, as you can see in the top, equals the total existing debt service, then minus the school improvements. The school improvements, that is the Amoresco, the energy company that does work in that has done work in the school department, and that is being picked up by the school department at the present time. Minus the McKinley School debt service payments will be the amount that the school department will put in their budget to rent the building from the city. However, after hearing Superintendent Dagan's speech about talk about exactly what it is, I think maybe we could raise his rent, but we're not thinking of that right now. Equals, now you look at the net totals that will be of debt service. So these are the amounts on the right-hand column, I guess is the column you'd most be interested in. These are the amounts with all this new debt service being placed onto the city's financial schedules and capital plan. These are the amounts each year that starting from 2013, that is actually actual, to 2043, you will see all the debt service payments with not only the current debt service, but also the additional debt service that we plan to issue. Okay. So it's right there. Now, with this, what I did on the next page is I felt, okay, we all have to think about 2.5. Whether or not we can include this, include this and still be under our debt levy limit according to 2.5. So, looking at that, looking at the appropriations, there are certain assumptions that were made. Based on these assumptions, I looked at the appropriations. The appropriations as a total were raised by 2.5% from the year before. So as that goes across, that's an increase of 2.5 million. What I did is I next isolated out of that, I took out of the appropriations the tax levy debt, so you could see it right there, that very clearly. I included the numbers that are on the page before on the right-hand side for those fiscal years. Then going down on the cherry sheet, excuse me, not the cherry sheet, the recap sheet, I took off the state charges, the overlay. State charges pretty much the same. The overlay is around 800,000 for even years past. Looking at the cherry sheet, I increased the cherry sheet by 2.4 million because, you know, it's been up and down so much over the last couple of years that 2.4 looked like the average or the median that it would be increased. The local aid, local receipts. The local receipts, if you look at them, you'll see that they decrease in 2014, 15, 16, and 17. The reason for that is, as we all know, we receive a rental car surcharge from the car companies that lease cars in the city of Revere, or rent cars in the city of Revere, and also we receive income on the motor vehicle excise tax. I have actually distributed that over those years because I feel that's when the years have been hit. We don't know because we contacted the owners of one of the major rental cars, leasing car companies, and rental car companies rather, and they said they don't know what they're going to do with their cars, if they're going to just move them right off the lot in September or just keep some of them there. So with that information, I didn't put it as drastically as it may be. However, we do have a reserve in there that in the rental car surcharge fund that we could maybe use this year. Then the enterprise funds, I have an average about 3.5% increase each year. And that's all, and other just comes off the recap sheet. Now, the total receipts. Now, the total tax levy. That's the amount of that tax levy is the amount to be raised minus the total receipts. There's a total tax levy. Now, this is the amount we'd have to raise for our tax levy. The 2.5% is the amount of money, sets a base for the amount of money that we can raise. The base in 2013 was an actual $67,492,851. I increased that plus new growth by the 2.5% right across the next two columns, and I put new growth in there so you can see that the assessors, myself, the economic development director, and the community development director sat down and said, what do we see coming in the city building when, and putting that on the schedule, and then now placing that, and then devising exactly, computing exactly what we felt would be the net amount of taxes that the city would receive from this new growth, and putting that on the schedule, and then placing it on when we'll be coming to the city, and then placing it on this schedule. So now we look at our levy limit, which is the total amount that we can raise. Subtracting the total levy limit from the levy limit, we see that in 2013 we're actually $5,936 under the limit, and you'll see in succeeding years there are numbers there that show that we are showing that we are under the limit. So for looking at for the first 1, 2, 3, 4 years, that in the 2017 being the highest year of the increase in the bond and indebtedness, you can see the city is able to, under this model, is able to afford this monies that we're asking to be funded. So looking at going on to the next page, you see the general obligation. This is a list so you can see what when the amount of interest rates the bond issues that we have, when they were bonded, the amount that was authorized, the amount that was borrowed, the amount to be paid, and the outstanding balance of each bond. So you could look at that. That's more informational. You could look at the other thing I wanted to make clear on there is the fact that some of the issues are much higher than what we actually bonded because of the fact, again, we had a problem with one of the issues way back when, and when they bonded the two new schools, I think it was two new schools at the time, or three new schools at the time, they put so many restrictions on it, we just weren't able, the city wasn't able to get a legal opinion. The bond council wasn't able to give a complete legal opinion on that. So what I did for your informational purposes, so you could, again, to be clear, a little more clear, if you look at one of these large sheets, I know it's going to be uncomfortable unfolding this, but cumbersome, but this is the only way I could print it out so that everybody could read it rather than make it multiple pages, and I think it's a little easier going across. Looking at it, the first one I want to look at is the one that says tax levy debt 2013. This is the, excuse me, the one that says all city debt. This one here that begins with, well, let me tell you, it ends with the mass pollution. What happens with this is that this will show you the actual debt from the city owes, and then the additional debt being placed on this schedule. It runs from 2013 again until 2000, let me see, 46. So looking at that, it will describe exactly how we place these bond schedules, how we play all these payments across the various budget for the fiscal years. It tells you on the statement, again, the issue date of the bonds. If you look at the beginning, you'll see the green dots. The green dots tell you that exactly that those are taken out of the enterprise fund and are not included in the computation of the tax levy debt. You look at further down the page, you'll see two red dots. You'll see the red dots for those four red dots or asterisks will mean that those are the issues that the city. Hello? Okay. So you're looking at the total long debt service. This will be the picture of it for the city with inclusion at the bottom. You'll see is the inclusion of the debt service, the new debt service that we're looking for. So it also gives you the interest rate that was paid, the estimated interest rate that will be looked to be maybe paid, the debt limit, whether it's inside, outside the debt limit, and whether or not, in the chapter in the law that it was authorized to borrow. Now, let me just look at one other page, if I may. If you look at I think I have. Okay, yeah. Both of these statements are self-explanatory. I think you looked at the one, from the one I just told would give the most information that you would need. I had the, out of the next debt statement, I took out of, for your clarification, it says tax levy debt only at the top, in small letters, if you can see it, it says right here, total tax levy debt. The reason I did that is because I didn't want to confuse what is the debt and the debt service that will be going on to the tax levy with what will be paid out of the water enterprise fund. So this one here would give you the best picture of it all, whereas one gives you all of the debt service for the city and future debt service. We authorize these bonds. But this one here gives you the debt service that is part of the tax levy only, and the new debt that will be part of the tax levy, so we can see how it hits our budgets. So those are the informational documents that I gave you today. Now, I'm sure there are many questions. That's the end of my presentation, the end of the agenda. We're going down to the point of the agenda where there are discussions in which we'll take in questions by the city councilors. I'd like, Council President, if I may, if we could start to the left and go to the right so that we have some order, and rather than open questions. So if you have questions for myself, or anybody in council has questions for myself, Superintendent Dakin, Powers and Sullivan, Bond Council, the financial partners, I'll handle those, the financial advisors, and the Drumney, Rosen, or collaborative partners. So, Councilor Regal.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'm not Mr. President.
First, I want to thank the mayor and thank George and thank everybody for coming out today. This is information that I've been looking for a long time. And I do wish that we had some of this information and some of these conversations before there was a decision made on where to place the school. But there's not much use in looking back. I do have a little bit of a disagreement about this being the cheapest option. We were told in August, when there was a decision made on where to place it, that the city would be on the hook for $8.2 million. And that the McKinley site was only going to be 11.3. And now we're looking at $23 million being on the hook. I have a lot of questions just generally about all the information that we've been given. I do want to say that I appreciate Dr. Dakin's wow factor, and I appreciate his vision for the schools and appreciate what he's done for the school system. But for me, I'm interested in knowing what the wow factor is going to be for taxpayers when they open up their tax bill, and whether or not we're looking at a schedule, that's pretty comprehensive until 2046. So this is a decision that's going to impact, my kids, hopefully, and obviously my nephews and my family going forward. And we've been presented with an avalanche of information. I have a couple of particular points that I just want to ask about, and then mostly for George. I'm just looking at this sheet. It
Which
looks
sheet is
like
that,
the
Counselor?
principal that we're bonding for McKinley is 7.1. So I just want to know what the difference is between, if you look at the end sheet, the total principal is 7.1. I think it looks like it should be in the ballpark of 14.
I have to look at, which report are you looking at?
Either one. Both of them have the same
And
number.
where are we looking
for-
at, down the bottom at the McKinley School's
All the way
feasibility
to the
study?
right. Last
Or-
column on the right.
Last column on the right.
Last column on the right. The total amount in
Yeah, but
principal and
under which
interest.
one?
7.1.
No, I understand, but which caption are you talking about?
That is for McKinley.
I have
That's
the McKinley
McKinley building
feasibility
costs,
study, I have the McKinley feasibility study, and
which is 500.
500,000, and then,
3 million for land acquisition. 7.1 for the school.
so we're talking about McKinley, it has to be in the police communications, McKinley feasibility study, land acquisition, I see that, Hill, remodeling, reconstruction of McKinley School. Are you talking about the remodeling, reconstruction of McKinley School? Yeah, is that what you're talking about?
No.
Remodeling, reconstruction? of
Remodeling is
McKinley
2.5. I'm talking about the one above that, 7.1.
School? The Hill School,
The Hill School.
okay, there's two, times, 7.1, there's two, we are issuing two types of debt. As I mentioned, if you looked at the schedule that was from First Southwest, the 7.1 million, we are bonding 7.1 million at two different times.
So that
For a
should be
total
on
of
twice.
14 million. That should be on there twice.
Okay, thank you. And I assume that this sheet has probably informed the pro forma, which shows our tax levy and all that information. So we
That
need to
won't
be
change that
mindful.
one. That number, that number did not come off of these. That came off of the schedule of First Southwest, so those numbers won't change.
But is there any information that we've gotten that is informed by this? Because this is wrong.
There's nothing, nothing other than the sheet.
Okay. So for local receipts, how much have we budgeted for in rental car surcharge?
Rental car surcharge would be, and I mentioned this in a article in the Journal some time ago. I brought it to light that when they do move, the surcharge is about $600,000 in the, $500 and something thousand, in the excise tax is probably another $5 for about a total million one.
Okay, so the local receipts, that we see them drop 299,000 from 13 to 14.
Right.
Does that take into, I assume that takes into the impact of the loss of rental car surcharge. How is that being made up? Because if we're going down,
I understand what you're saying.
1.5
As I
million.
said during my presentation was that we have a reserve on, that we haven't used on the rental car surcharge that we can use implant into the budget so that we'll be able to somewhat flow that loss down instead of taking the hit in one big year.
okay.
Because
And
at the beginning of the rental car surcharge, we did not use it as part of the budget immediately.
I'm also interested in the new growth. I see from 14 to 15, it goes over double.
Right.
And I just wondered what what projections went into that? Was that,
Well, the projections went in, we sat down again, I sat down with the head of the community development, the head of economic development, the Board of Assessors. We took into account, well, let me make this clear then, you may be going down this road. Let me make this clear, anything to do with the casino is not in here. There's nothing, no casino, anything to do with casino income or any kind is not in any of these figures. So looking at that, then I don't know if that may answer some of your questions, but what we are looking at is actual developments who have plans going, ongoing, and who will have buildings that will be going into the city within the next few years. And then we decided, when will they actually be in the construction stage, and when will that actually in actuality hit the budget, so that we can, or actually it's the tax rolls, so that we garner taxes from them.
so I'd assume that includes development at Wonderland probably, and
Wonderland meaning what? Wonderland Park?
the north
No.
lot?
The north lot, yes. Yes,
Okay, all right.
but not Wonderland Park at all, not the Wonderland dog track.
Again, Mr. President and George, I look forward to kind of digesting all this information. As I said, it's kind of an avalanche. I wish we had it a little bit sooner, but I'm glad that we have it in advance of Monday and in advance of actually voting. I hope that any mistakes that are found are corrected and we can kind of move forward and have some
Well, Counsel,
accurate.
I will assure you that any mistakes will be made will be corrected.
All right. Thank you.
and,
Thank you, Mr. Anzoni.
I'll make certain of that. And
Thank
there was
you.
one mistake, if you noticed. Okay. Thank you, Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank the mayor and the school department and everybody involved, R.F. Welch, for having this meeting. A lot of the comments I agree with Councilor Arrigo. He's brought out a lot of information. I wish we had, to be honest with you, a little more advance notice to digest these figures. Originally, the cost was supposed to be $9 million, and now it's up to about 25 million, 24 million. 2046, this loan order will be going on, this bonding. The first question is, how much are we going to be paying in interest, where the public can know, which is, they're watching now, in interest all the way to 2046?
Well, you have that on your sheets I
Right.
gave you.
I wanted you to say where the public would
Okay.
know. Those are questions they've been asking me.
Okay? It's on the sheets. You have that
Right.
information in front of you, Council.
It's about 12.7 million.
Right.
I really think we could have looked at, I was looking at the original site, I mentioned this quite a while ago, the original site of the McKinley School. I felt it would be more costly, less costly for the taxpayers to work on that site rather than getting involved with all the other extras, taking the ballpark and taking property. I mean, this is only my opinion. It would have been a lot easier to me, I mean, for everybody, if we stuck to the original site, but I wish somebody would probably comment on that. Can we revisit that? Do we have a figure? Would it be less costly if we looked at the original McKinley site?
Council, if I may, first off, we can't revisit it because this is the MSBA approved this site at this time. So as Councilor Rigo had said, has stated, that it's not good to go back because at the same time what happened is that MSBA has voted on this site and voted on these plans. And I guess no going back. In fact, I think Mr. Billings was handling it for the city of Revere at the MSBA. Maybe if you could comment on that.
Yes, the MSBA approved this plan, this budget, looking at all the options. I mean, we certainly did look at the existing McKinley site. The real critical issue was there was no room to put the modulars. Where do you put the kids? You've got, right now, a 420 student population that you have to put somewhere. There's no place on that site. It was, we had estimated around 2.5 million for modulars. That's probably low. There was also 7 properties that we would need to take, which is higher in the assessed value than the properties we are taking currently, even with the St. Mary's properties. So we looked at these options. If you look at the construction costs are the same, a new building, the design costs, all the other costs. The Hill Park site is still the most cost-effective. That's the one that the MSBA looked at. That's the one they approved. Any other options at this point, we'd be going back at the beginning and we'd be losing the grant.
And if I could just add to that,
Okay.
Counselor.
Yes, thank you.
In addition to the costs involved in having to relocate the students in modulars or wherever else that we would have to, place them, what we're actually doing now, we would have to completely demolish the building, which obviously there's a significant cost to that, and remove the debris removal. And who knows, what type of debris could be in that debris removal that would escalate the costs. Instead, what we're doing is we're keeping an asset on the city's books that building's got to be worth, and I don't claim to know anything about appraisals or assessments, but, the building's got to be worth $5 million, I would think. Am I close, Mr. Chairman? So maybe more, who knows? So, we get to keep the asset, we get to keep the utility, and, we're able to not have to buy as many and dislocate as many people as we otherwise would have. So as much, and the other thing that I just like to set straight to, and yeah, you could break out, like we're talking about bonding $22 million, and that's true. But as Dr. Dakin alluded to earlier, there's probably 3 of them that directly relate to the McKinley School. I mean, if you didn't want to go forward on the Harry Delarusso Stadium or You know, I mean, but you're talking, I mean, you know, we're trying to lay out, and that's why I'm trying to ask the city council, I mean, we're not looking for a Prop 2.5 override. The tax bills that people are gonna open up are probably gonna be the same tax bills they're gonna open up anyway, because we always go to, you know, right now we're at our levy, almost at our levy limit. You know, by statute, we can go up 2.5%. We're not looking for an override. You know, but what we are looking for is progress. And, you know, we're looking to move the city ahead. And, you know, in order to do that, if you want to do that in business, you want to do that, you know, you want to make an investment in your home, of course, you're not going to pay cash up front. You borrow. So we can talk about making payments to 2046. That's what everyone's doing right now when they buy a home. They take a mortgage. So, you know, they're not necessarily looking at that as, geez, I'm mortgaging my future. They're looking at it as, I'm gaining an asset, and I'm going to pay it down over time. And that's what we want to do here, and at the same time, contribute to the quality of life of our community. So I really want you to keep that in mind as you're thinking about spending this money. This isn't like, I'm not asking you to spend money and get nothing back in return. When you spend this money and hopefully come to the conclusion that you can support these projects, you're going to see something for your money. The public is going to see something for their money. And it's, you know, believe me, we've thought long and hard over this. These aren't decisions that we made arbitrarily. I mean, we met, all these guys sitting here will tell you, many, many, many times to discuss this. These aren't decisions that we take lightly. And I respect the fact the city council's not taking them lightly either. But I do, you know, again, you know, these are things that we are going to be seeing. We're going to be seeing a return for the money that we're spending. Okay, Council, I just want you to know that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing basically I'm concerned about the whole thing, I don't want to overburden the taxpayer. I know taxes have gone up, water rates have gone up, and I don't want to see people lose their home, move out of the city. So I just want to see something realistic, something that the taxpayers can afford and not be overburdened with another high tax bill. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I don't know how I wound up here. All right, George, where are you? Okay.
Councilor Patch.
I had to sit down for that. That was a long one.
Councilor Patch.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I want to thank the mayor and the superintendent for having this meeting. I know there's been a lot of talk with different figures thrown out there that it's good, you know, we're still going to take a while to digest all this information. But I want to bring out the point that when the McKinley Building Committee were having their meetings, I was the only one that actually spoke against building it at Hill Park. At the time, I believe Council Correggio was for the plan. But the thing is, after having several conversations with the mayor, the superintendent, and the Ward 4 councilor, Councilor Reardon, you know, I came to the conclusion that this is probably is the best site for it. This hurts me deeply because Hill Park, as a child and as an adult, meant a lot to me. But I really didn't get much feedback from people that were against it. And also, it's my duty as the Ward 6 councilor to represent the Ward 6 people. And I agree with Mayor Rizzo that that Little League Park behind St. Mary's, many kids have played ball down there over the years, boys and girls, softball and baseball. And I think it's, I feel the same way he does, that unfortunately, the Catholic Church have been selling off churches, and I was worried about a developer coming in and taking away that Little League Park. And I gotta think of and most of the kids that play down there are from my ward. Basically, as far as the expense to the taxpayers, I have a niece that went to the Revere schools, and now lives in Hanover, and they built a new high school, and they let the reimbursement go one year, and then the following year they realized they had to build a high school, so they had to do 2.5, and they got a separate bill on their taxes to pay for the high school. So, unfortunately, it's going to cost the taxpayers some money. You know, I'm a taxpayer. I got 2 sons that bought houses in Revere. They're taxpayers. But McKinley needs a new school. So if we let this reimbursement get away from us this year, I'm just afraid down the road we're going to be hit with the 2.5. Is the only way we'll be able to get the school built. So I'll have other questions after I go over this information, and hopefully we'll come to a conclusion here Monday night on exactly what's going to happen here. Thanks again for having a meeting, Mr. Mayor, Dr. Dakin, and we'll see what happens Monday. Thank you.
Council Patch. Council Penta.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank everybody. I'll just put that over a blanket. I don't want to waste time because I do have a few statements to make, because I don't know if I think like Councilor Dakin because I'm in the same era. I lived here 59 years, just about 2 in the city, so maybe we think alike a little bit, because you made different comments about double dipping on certain items. I call it triple and quadruple dipping on some of these issues. And, you know, we'll go back to 1999. I was one councilor that was here. I'll admit I was here. I'll admit that we talked about 5 schools. It was a promise. This council, the school committee back then made a promise. This is one of those promises we made for the school. And I'll talk about, the school we'll talk about is apples. Okay, now we got a fruit bowl here. Bananas, oranges, alike. So if you want to talk 20 million, 22 million, that's the whole fruit bowl. It's not the school issue. Yeah, if you want to try to yell out to the taxpayers how much they're paying, why don't you say what you're getting for it? Because I will start that the administration has been right up front from the beginning. I was at a stadium photo op, if that's what you want to call it, that the stadium was said was going to cost $5 million to $5.5 million. We're getting grant money for 2.7. Talk about the track stadium. You can't have home meets there. For the history of that park, I graduated 42 years, I'm going to talk about 1972, president of the track team back then. It was a disgrace you couldn't have a home meet back then. You still can't. You have to go outside the city to another stadium. That's a shame. We're not second-rate citizens in Revere. You know, you go by the new police station. Proud to live in Revere going by that. Costs a lot of money. But if we had the foresight back 20-something years ago to buy maybe 300 Ocean Ave, where the police station probably could have went, and rented out some space, we wouldn't have to pay that bond money. We'd probably be 25 million ahead right now. So with that said, the school issue is one thing. When I went to 4 different A, B, C, D, I was against Hill Park until they came in with the figures, and it was the cheapest place to put it for the taxpayer. Was there talk about taking the houses? That was an if, question mark. The right way of doing it, the negatives were a lot of traffic on Park Ave. Okay, let's put our heads together. How do we solve it? Solving that problem is going to cost a few dollars to have a second entrance into that school and back out again. People are screaming about that, Park Ave. That was one of the biggest negatives putting it there. The mayor, the superintendent, the building committee put their heads together. To me, it's short money to do it right. I've been on this council for a long time. They Band-Aided a lot of things in this city. And I don't even want to go there. Previous mayors have Band-Aided different things. Even these sub pumps, I don't want to get into it, should have been fixed 15 years ago and saved us millions of dollars. But with that being said, St. Mary's Park, I seen the mayor stand up here. So it didn't have a price on that last time they were up here. They got a price. Okay, the new idea was to keep the old McKinley School, 2.5 million. About time we have administration that are thinking like business people. You're going to have a building worth $7 million, right in your figures, financial director, 0 to the taxpayer. With another 75% of that building, if you wanted to, keep the administration here, keep all departments here, rent it out to lawyers, whoever. You could make a lot of money off that building. But you have that option of doing, A, leasing it, renting it, doing both, partly lease it. It's already going to be leased by the school part, pay 100% of it. Why knock it down? It's like the mayor said, I think it might be worth more than $7 million, putting $2.5 million into it. It's a big building. You know, people say the Ward 4 school. I represent Ward 1. I represent the Immaculate. I represent this area we're sitting in right now. These kids around here all go to the McKinley School. Ward 5, up by the high school, go to the McKinley School. It's not a Ward 4 school. And I think the superintendent said it. We're in this together, not just financing the city. We're in for the schools. You know, growing up, unfortunately, every school I went to, they knocked down maybe 3 years after I left it. The old high school, I used to run track in the basement in the winter. Corridors that were this wide. They knocked it down 2 years after I graduated. You know, you go to the high school now, they got basketball courts and everything else. You're supposed to leave the next generation better than you had it. And I think, you know, this was a promise in '99. It wasn't, and I basically told Arthur in Ward 3, his school was built before it was supposed to be. Ward 4 thought they got shafted a little bit, but unfortunately, if you built this school first, you'd only have half the capacity, and you'd have to ship the other kids across the city, which would be some of my ward. But, George, I'm going to make this short and sweet, because it all comes down to numbers, and numbers don't lie. No matter how you juggle them, throw them, talk about them, speak here, speak to the newspaper, they don't lie. $22 million looks like the high figure. Right. Soup to nuts, school, buying the field, 3 new schools behind the St. Mary's Church. Brand new state-of-the-art stadium. Okay? I was on the board of Pup Warners for 12 years. Practice there, had games there in mud. Wouldn't even use the inside of the locker room. I mean, that's been a disgrace from day one. And Pup Warner threw $250,000 in there one time for the stands and lights. So I'm proud to see that. But with everything, put money into the old McKinley School. And the other thing no one brought up, a lot of schools being built. These kids for 2 years are going to be going to that school for the next 2 years. Right. If not, if you knock that down, they'd be in Beachmont, which we had to put up with the Paul Revere School for a couple of years, cramped in. So there's a lot of that's why I'm saying triple and quadruple dip in here. You have that for 2 years. But the bottom line is going to come down to dollars and cents, and common sense also. For $1 million, which you get $22 million, bonding this over 30 years, my opinion, you're probably paying $1 million a year. Is that correct? Pretty much so.
Someone in there.
Now, if you pay $1 million, I own a house in Revere. I'll go 100,000. Or you can go 400,000, whatever. Let's go 100,000, multiply it times 4 if you want. To me, I figure out that's $4 a month. My house is worth 400,000, it'd be $16 a month. You're talking $1.50 a week. That's what we have to pay as taxpayers. I mean, this is every taxpayer in the city has to pay. Every homeowner, business person is going to pay this $1 million. So weigh it out. I don't know what citizens in this city, and I've talked to a lot of them in coffee shops that started screaming, $55 million, how can I afford it? If you'd happen to tell them the truth, It's not, you know, it's not going to make or break it. And then you tell them what you're getting to be proud of, you live in Revere. They say, why wouldn't anybody pay that? You got to be out of your mind not to pay it. As Councilor Patch said, 80% from the schools. You're not going to see that anymore. If we don't go forward with this in 2 or 3 years, we're paying 100%. And they'll condemn that school. And they'll put them somewhere else and bust them somewhere else. You know, and once in a while you say you can't afford not to do it. And I've said that many times up here. And this is one of those you can't afford not to do it. You can backside this, leave the houses, end up with a traffic problem. Leave the building condemned, like we have a police station here that's been sitting there since it's been closed. You know, those things I thought, you know, and I see the future that this administration has, the foresight, thinking big. Do it right. Don't Band-Aid it. Let's do it right. Let's tell the truth to the taxpayers. What's it really going to cost in my pocket, owning a house, and every other pocket? It's short money. It's not 55 million. You can scream 55 million. When I heard that, it's in the newspaper. It's like yelling fire in a theater. Of course, every taxpayer should be up in arms to hear that. But let's, bottom line, what is it costing me? What are we getting out of it? Because every person's going to use that stadium across the city. That stadium has nothing to do with the school. It's extra. And we got 2.7 million. We might as well use it right. That's the way I look at it. But I mean, I'll save some comments for Monday night. And I know Monday night's a public hearing. And I appreciate, Superintendent, if you come up, because there are a couple of councilors not here that may have questions, and different public may be here, knowing that the 11th we have a public meeting on that. So with that, I'll save some of my comments for Monday, but I do want to thank you, George. You basically answered all these things, and going along, for any council to say that they didn't have the numbers or know what was coming at us, I believe that's disingenuous, because if you're at these public meetings and the discussions of the school and everything else, you know, there was talk about take the houses, maybe not take the houses. So it was there. The thought and the talk was there. St. Mary's Church, no question, that was there. These things that have been discussed, they've been in open forums, so not knowing they're coming down, you can estimate in your head what they're going to cost, what they're not going to cost, or if you want to do them or not do them, downsize, but that's totally up to each individual on the council for this. But I appreciate you coming. Mayor, I commend you for your foresight. Thank you.
Council Powers.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to thank the mayor, Dr. Dakin, and former Superintendent Ty, and all of the other people who were here from the school building team to give us an outline on what is happening. You know, I remember I was one of those councilors 11, 12 years ago when Dr. Dakin came up here and you talked about building 5 new schools for $85 million at a cost of $8.5 million to the taxpayers in this city. And I know prices have escalated, things have changed, our population has increased, and maybe it's increased because of the educational system that we offer to the children in this city. Maybe that's part of the reason. I know if I were a parent living in the inner city and saw all of the shootings and everything else down the street, I'd want to get out of there. You can't go to too many places. Come to Revere, we've got a 3-mile Crescent Beach, we've got 3 MBTA stations, and we've got one of the best school systems in the state. And I applaud you for that. And I'm not here to, you know, curse the darkness, okay? I said I would vote for a new McKinley School. I've said it repeatedly, and I will vote for a new McKinley School. Now, I look at some of the other projects here, like the old McKinley School, the house on that property, on the street over there. I honestly, at this time, cannot support that, and I'll say it publicly right now. Okay, it's only $2.5 million. Only $2.5 million is a lot of money. We're going to keep kids in that school for the next couple of years anyway. Perhaps in 2 years from now, our financial picture will look better. Mayor Rizzo will be able to come before the city council and say, you know, I just signed a mitigation agreement with the casino. We've got this coming in. They're building more hotels, whatever. bringing more revenue into the city. At that time there, you tell me that then, and I can support you refurbishing your old McKinley School, and I can support that extra house out there that you need on Foster Street. Right now, I'll support, and I'll say it publicly, I'll support the McKinley School. I promise that to you, Dr. Dakin. I promise that to the students that go to the McKinley School currently, and I will support that 100%. What bothers me is that email that was sent out this weekend about the school department being up here Monday night to be heard. I'm concerned with the taxpayers in this city being heard. The elderly people who are living on Social Security, low pensions, and fixed incomes. People that retired 20 years ago and have lived into their 80s and 90s and are living on the same money that they were getting back then. Those are the people I'm concerned with. Mayor Rizzo, is it you?
You keep going.
Okay.
You keep going.
I thought maybe I had said something
No,
that
no, no.
offended someone.
No.
Okay. Okay. I'm offended by the comment about the old McKinley School possibly becoming 250 Broadway or another 250 Broadway. I know myself, I couldn't support that. I think my record on voting against housing in this city, multiple family dwellings, I think it's clear and shiny right out there. I voted against the extra 281 apartments down at PJ's because I saw this coming. I saw this coming. And I don't think Councilor Reardon, and I can't speak for him, but I don't think he would support turning that old McKinley School into 250 Broadway. Maybe affordable housing for the elderly, that might be something we can look at. Maybe we won't have the school population 2-3 years from now that we have now. Maybe there'll be a decrease, I don't know. But with that said, Mr. President, I can say I will definitely support the Hill School project. I cannot support the McKinley School refurbishing or the purchase of the land next to it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, if I could just say just a couple of things. First off, Council, I want to thank you up front for your support in voting for the McKinley School project. That obviously is the biggest piece of what we're looking to do here. As far as the email that went out, and I know the email that you're referring to, you know, it's like anything else that goes up for a public hearing. You know, you attend public hearings all the time on both sides of where you are at now. You know whether you come and you testify before the Zoning Board of Appeals or the Traffic Commission or the Licensing Board. You know, there's always proponents and opponents, and you know, so I mean, obviously, this project is very, very important to the parents and children of the McKinley, and so, you know, I mean, they absolutely want to show their support for the project, because if, let's say, nobody did come, the council may think, well, maybe they really don't care about the school. So, you know, I mean, obviously, the public needs to be, or certainly the McKinley School community needs to be aware of the fact that, we're having this public hearing, and that the council needs to hear from them to, because you are making a big decision, you're voting on a lot of money, and you want to know that you have the support behind you when you make this vote. So, I don't want you to feel as though that in any way, at least that's not the way I took it, that the council was being trying to be boxed in. That was not the intent. The intent was, let's show our support, so that the city council understands the importance of this issue. So, hopefully that alleviates any concerns that any councilors may have had. Okay, I just wanted to mention that.
I'm not looking for a defense, and I'm not looking for, right now we're looking for comments from our councilors. I don't want to get into defending yourself, Mr.
No, I'm not defending myself. I'm proud of the email. I want people to know that the email was mine, because there's just an illusion.
And it was not an email, it was a blog.
It might have been under your name. It might have been a blog, or the blog, the internal blog, or an email, but it was mine, and I stand up to everything in it. And it was in request of, from what I'm told, the council president asking for people to be here and even saying he wanted next door filled and was going to put TVs there, and conversations with Councilor Reardon that indirectly said, please bring some people here. So that's why it went out. In response to what was a request, Council President, in all honor, you asked for people to be here on Monday night's council meeting, and you even said you wanted the next room filled. I only put an email out in a blog along those lines, and Councilor Reardon has asked me a number of times over the last 2 weeks to bring people to the meeting. That's what it was about, so let's just clear it up.
And may I say, Mr. Superintendent, that I never asked for that. I don't know where you heard that.
I think we can play the tape and you would hear it.
Yeah, I never said that I want.
You said you wanted the next door filled and you would put TVs there.
Mr. Superintendent, with all due respect, I told you I didn't want to get into an argument here. I didn't want you to defend yourself. I'm sorry it came up, tonight, this afternoon, because this is not what this is for. This is for a financial summit. It's not a public hearing for the new school or the bonds that are coming up. That's what this is for. Councilor Reardon.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. A couple of things that I would like to reflect on. First of all, the school and how it was designed and brought forward, how this plan was put together. It was long-standing and public process with a full committee of which many people who are here right now are on. There were multiple publications. As the estimates grew, as the plans grew, as we eliminated some possibilities almost completely for financial purposes, but for other reasons as well. We all agree that the McKinley School has to be built. I haven't heard anybody say, well, we can't build a McKinley School. And frankly, we'd be foolish not to take what we're getting from the state to build a school that we absolutely have to build. Has to be on the hillside. From a financial point of view, I think has been completely and totally vetted. So that leaves us with the question, and by the way, I share the mayor's vision, and I think everybody here shares the mayor's vision. Having a state-of-the-art football stadium, sports stadium, public palace, public place is everybody's dream for Del Russo Stadium in that area. It's certainly for the Ward 4 people. They've suffered with a place that looks like a prison yard for long enough. Having 3 new sports fields down by St. Mary's makes tremendous sense, a great place for people to recreate. And there's some challenges with the site. We'll overcome them like we always do. Having a new place for the school superintendent's office to go so that we can avoid building a new high school perhaps, so we can educate the very same additional children that we have had to build 5 schools for in our own school system is extremely important. Ultimately, though, the question is this: can we pay for it without overburdening the taxpayers of the city of Revere, i.e., without causing them to have to consider a Prop 2.5 type override? And from what I understand, Mr. Treasurer, that it is your opinion that that is something we can do. Is that not true? Well, you didn't say it, but I wanted to make sure it was said, okay? In your opinion, as the chief financial officer of this city, we can do this without overburdening the taxpayers beyond what your projections suggest.
Yes.
And those projections include that we, as we historically do, raise our tax assessment by 2.5%, the maximum we're allowed to do. Is that
That's
correct? You've also included some other estimations which I assume you believe to be reasonably accurate and supportable by past history and what you expect for the future. Is that not correct?
Yes, I do.
All right. So just to get to the specifics, it seems to me by looking at this paperwork, and again, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for bringing this to our attention. It could have been sooner, but it's good to have it because this is the ultimate question. Can we pay for it? Now, from what I see here, our big hit year is 2017. Is that what you would agree? Mm-hmm. And at that point, we're going to be servicing a debt of approximately $5.3 million from what I think I see on your schedules.
Which year is that?
2017.
The
year that we have the highest hit to our budget because of debt service.
It's $4,982,000, right?
All right, and there was, well, I'm looking at several different figures, but I understand some of that money is actually being paid from other
By other
sources,
sources,
such
that's
as the
correct.
school department. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So in your opinion, again, based on the assumptions, in 2017, the worst year of this hit, we will have an excess in the budget, you're estimating, of about $900,000, thereby eliminating the need to increase any further taxes or assessments to the city, taxpayers of the city of Revere. Is that not accurate?
Over and above 2.5, that's correct.
Over and above the,
2.5.
over and above the 2.5 that we historically
Right.
increase
We
our
have
assessments by.
increased, right.
Is that accurate?
That's correct.
All right. That's really all I wanted to know. And I understand some of the council's reticence. And I frankly, as much as I believe you, and want to believe you, we have to recognize that some of these things, at least, are your good faith estimates.
Right.
And you could be wrong.
Could be.
And you could be wrong under, you could be wrong over, correct?
Okay, you're
But
right.
just the same, they're estimates. I have no expertise whatsoever in your area, but I just want to make that clear, that there are assumptions in here that have yet to be proven, although past history suggests that they're accurate. All right, so, again, there are things in this that comprise the mayor's vision, including taking the present McKinley School and refurbishing it, including spending $2 million to refurbish the fields that we absolutely have to replace Hill Park with, and including taking properties in accordance with that $2.5 million refurbishment of the McKinley School. And probably most visionary is the $2.5 or so million that we're going to have to contribute over and above what the state is contributing to us to have a state-of-the-art sports field, which, and getting back to Dr. Dakin's wow factor, I think will be the biggest, with the exception of the school, be the biggest impact on this community that we could possibly have. These may be considered extras to some of my colleagues up here. I'm frankly not sure that they even need to be bonded at this point. But all I wanted to hear was you say that we could pay for it, and that's all I really have to hear right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't think there's been anybody who has been more a supporter of the new school building program than myself. I've been on the school building committee since its inception. I don't think I missed a construction meeting at the first two schools that were built. I like to think I was an asset to that committee and made some suggestions that were helpful. But Councilor Powers said something that, it's like the elephant in the room. If we don't talk about these things, then we're here because the main reason for being here, as Councilor Reardon just said, is can we afford this? And it appears that we can barely afford this. We can afford it if we go through with everything that's being proposed here. And I like to think that your projections have historically been accurate. I don't think you've made any projections to me since the year 2000 that I can say you were way off base and you were really mistaken.
I don't think I am, Counsel.
Well, that's the truth, and you know that's what I do up here is I tell the truth. Sometimes it gets me in trouble, but I'm going to stick to it. It's been a good practice. I don't have to think about what I said last week or whatever. The bottom line is we did tell the taxpayers in 2000 that we were going to build 5 new schools at a cost of $85 million, and that was going to cost the taxpayers $8.5 million. We all know what happened. A lot of things happened as far as economically, and things got put on hold. But that number's got to be, I think, in the 40 or 50, $40+ million range now with the McKinley School. Am I correct?
That's on the sheet. If I added them up,
Well, I don't need an exact figure. I'm guesstimating here. And the bottom line is when I look an 80-year-old or a 78-year-old taxpayer in the eye, and they say to me, I can barely pay my taxes, I'm going to lose my house. I have to be conscious of everything I do up here that costs them another dollar.
Now, Council Penter's absolutely right. Relatively speaking, it's a small amount of money when you break it down to that $1 per week or whatever, you know. But you can't lose sight of the fact that we're affecting, you know, we're affecting seniors more than anybody else. Those are the people that I really worry about. And I hate to say it, but I'm now in that category. And, but I see the pain on their face, and I see when people say to me, and I agree that the $55 million figure is almost like yelling fire in a crowded theater, because it stirs all the emotions, and it brings the person that barely can pay their taxes, and we all know about water and sewer and all that, you know, it's tough. For somebody on a fixed income, it's damn near impossible to maintain. So we have to be conscious of what we're doing here. Am I going to, I have to support the McKinley School. It's absolutely needed, and I'm glad to hear that the school department's going to fund the remodeling of the McKinley School, and so I don't have to worry about, and we probably don't have to bond that for a while. I guess the things that come into play is how important are these takings? Are they absolutely crucial? And how much impact, if we don't take as many properties, is that going to create traffic and all these other things? Because we keep talking like millions, like, you know, they're not a lot of money. But, you know, a few million here and a few million there, pretty soon we're talking real money. And what was once $8.5 million is now at least 40 million. So I certainly support the mayor's vision. I know what he's doing. We have a lot of good things on the horizon, and I guess that's what I would say to the taxpayers, that we have some great potential economic development. God willing, we're going to get a casino with a great mitigation package, and then a lot of this will become a lot less important, and I won't have to squint when I look at the taxpayers in the eye and say, listen, we got all this other funding coming in, but unfortunately it's not here yet. So I don't know, this is probably more a rant than anything else, because when push comes to shove, I'm certainly going to vote for the McKinley School. I don't think there's any surprise about that, but a couple of these other, if I determine that we can hold off on bonding the, I guess I heard we're not going to bond the rehab of the McKinley School now, right? So that's off the table anyway. So,
Well, excuse me, we're going to bond it, but the debt service from it, we want to bond it, but the debt service from it is coming directly from the school department.
yeah, but are we going to bond it now?
We asked the bonding.
We're not going to spend it now.
We're not going to spend it
At
now.
least if we can get
I see.
authorization.
Oh, okay, okay.
You know, I mean,
all right.
that would be our goal.
Well, at least there's, you know, there's a funding source for that. I wish I had a funding source for the stadium. I wish I had a funding source for the takings. I wish I had the funding source for rehabbing the ball fields at St. Mary's, but we don't. So now we have to look at, you know, we're going on faith that we're going to be able to afford it. And like I said, our financial chief has not let us down before, and I know that you've all put a lot of work into it, the economic development team, your administration, and I appreciate all this, and I appreciate that this is all on the table before the public hearing on Monday night. That doesn't mean that there's not going to be, I hope, a full presentation, because there's not a lot of people that probably saw this on a Saturday afternoon here, and I think that the taxpayers need to be heard from. And more importantly, they need to understand that it's not as scary as was portrayed in the newspaper. That's all I have, Mr. President. But
I'm just going to say a couple quick things in response to a couple of things you said. First off, you know, you're 100% right. This meeting was meant, you know, really, you know, for the city council. That's why we're here. We're here for the city council. So, you know, to hopefully answer, at least from the financial standpoint, any questions that you might have early on. the talk about the seniors, and believe me, I'm as sensitive to that as every one of you are here sitting on the city council. I've heard, people say, look, my kids are grown and gone, why should I have to pay? And, some of those people you'll never convince. But on the flip side, there's other people that understand that. I think somebody said, you want to leave the city, you want to leave the next generation better off than you were, right? And, that's where we as elected leaders have to sometimes just say, look, this is for the future of the city. I mean, we could have this conversation 10 years from now and keep kicking the can down the street, and then it just becomes exponentially more expensive, and then people just 10 years further down the road have to pay for it. I wish this conversation we had 15, 20 years ago, and we'd be almost paying up these bonds, we'd be moving on to newer and better things. So, but this is what, these are the cards that were dealt, and this is the hand that we have to play. And I think together, if we all, as I've said a couple times now here at the podium, that if we all kind of just, look at the big picture and what this is going to mean to the entire community as a whole, we'll realize that, as Councilor Penta said, you break it down, the $1 million a year in debt service that we'll be picking up, if you break that down per taxpayer, is not that big of a hit. And, conversely, it's going to get that much more expensive if we wait another 6 months or a year or 2 or 3 years. So that's really, it's not easy for any of us to come up here, any member of my, administration, and ask you to vote for $22 million. But at the same time, we know that once, assuming and hoping that we get that approval and get that authorization, that you all will see the fruits of your labor, the fruits of your vote, when these, one after the other, these ribbon cuttings all start taking place at the new investment we've made in our community. So, but please, Councilor, don't think that we don't take it very seriously. I know you do, and we take it very seriously, the amount of money we're spending.
Mr. Mayor, I think I neglected to thank you for all of this presentation and all the work you've put into this. And I know you feel the same way I do about our seniors, and that you don't want to burden them. But I just wanted to get the facts on the table to not pretend that we don't know that we promised X amount of dollars back 15 years ago or 12 years ago or whenever it was, and that things changed drastically. We didn't know the economy was going to collapse. We didn't know that we weren't going to be able to fund the Paul Revere the way we were supposed to, and that the numbers, I think we spent more on the Paul Revere than we thought we were going to spend on the whole 5 schools because of the funding source dried up and things changed. And now we're back. At least we're getting 80% on this round, but we have a lot of extra costs to make it work, and it looks like we have to spend that money. But you know that I don't spend taxpayers' dollars easy here, and I even try to negotiate with nonprofits to come in and pay taxes, because we can't keep burdening people. We can't tell an 80-year-old woman that her taxes are going up because we're bringing in a nonprofit, and in spite of how good that is for the city and for the kids of the city, we have to have a balancing act here, and we've got to try to make it fair to everybody. So thank you so much for your leadership. You know that I'm a big supporter of this administration and everything you've been doing up to now. So thanks again.
Thank you very much, Councilor.
Thank you. Well, it seems though I'm the last guy in the block here. I'm not going to say too much, just going to say, first of all, thank you to the mayor, and everybody's patting you on the back this afternoon, Mr. Mayor, so I might as well add to it, and your back must hurt by now. Thanks to George, the team that came up, school committee folks. I was glad to hear the superintendent admit that school property belongs to the city. And one of the questions I had, and everybody's saying that the school department budget is going to pay for the McKinley building renovation. But the question I have is, where in that budget does that money come from originally? If it comes from city money, the portion, then the city's still paying for it. It's not coming from the school department. If it's coming from a grant outside, I don't know that. That hasn't been stated. But, you know, I still have questions on the McKinley building of where that money is really, really coming from. School department budget is part of the city budget. In the long run, we still pay for it. We still have to vote on it. We still have to approve it. So it's all part of a big package. This year, it's $133 million. Somewhere between 45 and 50% of that is school department money. One question I had to the architects of the building, I didn't hear you mention handicap parking. Yes, on the property.
There is handicap parking.
Okay, the appropriate number by ADA? Okay, just want to make sure of that. But I want everybody to realize this is the financial summit is to hear the whole package of the city. You know, the mayor added on the school department portion. But after the hearing on Monday, which I did not say I want everybody to come, I said I expect a lot of people to come, and you can look at the tape on that. With that, this room only holds 136 people. And in anticipation of that, I have requested that the next room, our old auditorium, what's left of it, be made available for that overflow. Revere TV is providing a big screen TV, and chairs will be set up for those that come late. So once this room is filled, you go next door. Okay, and when we do ask for hands to see those folks that don't want to speak, don't get the opportunity to speak, we will have someone back there to take account and make sure everybody is appropriately recognized. And just in relation to that comment that was made about that the city council promised 5 schools in 1999. I was not here in 1999, so I didn't make a promise. In 1999, folks, as a city council, ends at the end of their term. They cannot speak for future councilors. Yes, you can, Counselor, and I don't have to hear your comments on the side, thank you. I didn't comment with you. So there's 6 councilors here that were not here in 1999, which is not a majority that could have made that promise. And I'm sure that we all have open minds. We will all look at each individual bond. As Councilor Powers said, I'm not convinced on the McKinley building. I am definitely 100% convinced on the Harry Del Russo Stadium project. I'm still open on the McKinley School. I have not decided. I'm still taking in all the facts. We still have several meetings before we make a final vote. The public hearing, again, will be Monday. Meeting starts at 6. By the time we get rolling, it'll be a little after. It will be a long night. And following that, the city council will meet as a council of the whole several times to discuss the 5 different bonds. So we will have several meetings on that to be able to absorb all of this that Mr. Anzoni brought to us today, and also to what the team brought today. So I would hope that Monday, people restrain themselves. There's going to be a lot of excited people. I would ask they be patient. They maintain their order, and no comments from the state. I will repeat this again on Monday, that allow people to speak without making comments, as I heard a little while ago, on the side. We want to hear everybody that may be able to speak. Okay, so Mr. Mayor, thank you again. George, thank you again. Sir.
Can I ask one question, please?
Two.
George Anzoni and the city solicitor, George Anzoni and the assessor.
Go ahead, sir. Name it, come up here and give your name and address for the record, please.
Just a couple of questions. Jim Mercurio,
push the button on them.
Jim McCary, 193 Crescent Ave. This is a great spreadsheet, by the way. Put a lot of time into it. And this number right here that you said should be 2 times?
Right.
So that would be 14,152,000. Okay, all right, so that number is wrong. So all these numbers down here in correspondence would be wrong also, if you carry these numbers down.
Right, but that's not, what do you have, the whole package is that sheet?
I just have this sheet.
Well, if you look at the other sheets that we have, none of these numbers on this sheet carry to any other one.
So these numbers on this sheet are wrong.
These numbers, only this sheet is wrong. That's
Only
correct.
this sheet is wrong. Okay, so this is,
So you want to
so this would be,
$7 million to it, and then whatever the interest is, double the amount of that column, you'll get to the right.
so that would be 14 million plus 5 million, which would be $24 million.
No, no.
Interest.
7.1, right, and
And-
here's the interest, right, so,
Yeah.
yeah, no, $20 million.
So now that would be
And the
double.
total, that'll be double the amount of that original issue, that's correct.
Okay, are all the councils aware of that?
They understood that.
Okay, all right.
They understood that.
Just making sure. All right. I just have another question for the city assessor.
Mr.
in your-
Chairman, this one's for you.
In your professional opinion, the McKinley School value, right now, I heard a figure of $5 million. Would that be accurate?
I think it's right around that number, yes.
So that's right around the number?
Right around that.
Okay, I'll have some further questions for the council on Monday evening.
Thank you, sir. Well, folks, thank you again for all coming today. It's been a long afternoon. Thank you for your time on a Saturday, and we'll see everybody Monday. Thank you.